if you can grab a seat, we're going to start with an amazing keynote by Naomi Ceder. So please a big round of applause.
Thank you. It is a great pleasure to be here. I think this is the most magnificent place that I have given a Python talk in, or actually any talk in ever. So I may be distracted, but yes, it's a beautiful place here. I am very honored to be asked to speak to you, to tell you a little bit about the Python community as I see it. So, out of curiosity, for how many of you is this your first PyConES, or S? Okay, it's my first one too, so we're all in this together. And I do want to thank the people who have been watching out for me. So, I mean, several of the Keynote team have kind of had babysitting duties to take care of me and make sure I don't get in trouble. And they have done a wonderful job. So, I am very thankful for that. So, I am aware that I am one of the few English talks. I cannot speak in Spanish, lo siento. I did do the slides in Spanish. I want to thank Mabel Delgado for checking them, and she found some mistakes that she corrected. If there are still mistakes, those are mine. The fact that there aren't as many mistakes is thanks to Mabel, so I do thank her for that. I hope that will help you perhaps in following things. I know as I try to follow things in other languages, it helps if I have something that I can see. So that is my idea. Again, I hope that works. So what I wanted to do was to talk about community. And I think that in our current times, in these days, it seems that community as an idea, community as a thing, seems to be having a hard time. It is not doing so well, the idea of community. Everywhere we look, it seems that communities we thought we could count on are trying to break apart. There is this kind of thing everywhere, no matter where you look. And this is not good, because as far as I can tell, it always comes back to community. Everybody wants to be a part of a community, wants to have a community that they can rely upon, that they know will be there, that they know they will be a part of. And this is even true in terms of what we do. I don't think these days it's really possible to write any worthwhile piece of software completely alone. People try to say, oh no, technical work is one thing, community work is another thing. In fact, without the community aspect, you cannot do the technical aspect. So I would say that community work is technical work. There is no difference. We need to have this as well. It is every bit as important. Perhaps in some ways more important, because somebody who is very strong technically but is destructive of the community will actually push you backwards even technically, because again, no one can do it alone. So the title of this talk came from something that Brett Cannon said, and in the 2014 PyCon, he gave the opening remarks, and what he said was, I don't know about the rest of you, I came for the language, but I stayed for the community. that is something that resonated with me. I have quoted it and maybe helped popularize it. It is Brett Cannon's. He's kindly agreed that I may share this. So, it's his remark, but it's started to be quoted and picked up more and more. And I think it's a very important thing to keep in mind. By the way, I did put a link to my slides down in the corner there, if you can decipher that, see that. So in there is a link to the YouTube of the talk, and it tells you where he's, so if you want to go see that, you can. So I need to tell you about myself. Princess Bride picture, I promised. I am, in fact, very old. It's probably an even chance I am, if not the oldest person in the room, one of the oldest people in the room, but no, I'm not going to tell you. And I have been coding for a long time. When I started, there was no Python. My first exposure to computers was at the University of Wisconsin, where I did my PhD in Greek and Latin. So I don't know if you've seen, there's been a hashtag on Twitter lately, not qualified for tech. Not qualified for tech. And I used, to do my dissertation, I used a UNIVAC 1108. It was very cutting edge at the time. They had moved the punch card machines over to the wall, and instead we had these terminals that were great because you could do, for a while they were doing one line at a time, so we're using line editors. So if you use any of the old line editors like they used to be in DOS or whatever, so you could do that. But it was even better because when I did it, you could do a whole screen at a time. You could edit the text and then save it and it would go off. Wait, come back and you could do the next screen at a time. It was very, very amazing. There was a wonderful invention that I used to do my dissertation called the laser printer. This was amazing. So that's when I started with computing. I then, did some things with Apple IIs. I was actually teaching at a school in Athens, Greece. And as I've told people, I had money, I was intending to buy a car, and then when I saw how the Greek drivers are, I decided maybe I should do something else with my money. And I think this meant that I lived longer, actually. So I bought an Apple IIc, and it was a funny machine because it had a Greek character set ROM. And you could press a key combination, and you'd switch to Greek characters and switch back. Except Greece, like here, is very hot, so it would heat up, and then it would randomly switch back and forth, so it was really entertaining. But I learned how to program there. I learned in BASIC, I learned assembler. I had a lot of free time, I guess, I don't know. I then went on to, when I came back to the States, I learned some Pascal, but that was but I taught Pascal at the school I was at, actually. For a couple of years. I learned some C, DBase 3+, all of these old things. So only old people in the room will know what I'm talking about. But some of you, I see some of you laughing, yes. So I did that. There was this invention, C++ and object-oriented programming, and everyone was like, oh, wow, this is amazing. There's that, there's Visual Basic, yes, I have written a program in Visual Basic for DOS. Okay, if you didn't know such a thing existed, it did. And I wrote a DBase 3+ library to use Visual Basic in DOS. That is how bad it was. So I did all of those things. I started to learn Java because I knew I was going to have to teach the current programming language at our school. At our school, we made everyone in the 9th or 10th year, they had to take a computer course where they all wrote a program. This was everybody in the school. And I was facing the fact that I was going to have to teach everybody who was in the 9th or the 10th year Java when they were in high school. And no offense, I didn't think they would like that much. I knew I wouldn't like that much. It was a very scary time. So, as it happened, this was 2001, I went to a Linux world where this guy, Guido van Rossum, this guy was teaching this language Python that I'd never heard of. But some people said it was interesting, and he was teaching this language in a day-long workshop. So I went to this day-long workshop, and I asked some pretty stupid questions, but I liked this language. It was beautiful. I mean, if you wanted to do hello world, you just did print hello world. I mean, I was thinking I was going to have to teach 9th graders Java hello world. This is frightening. So it's like, oh, this is great, this is great. It's easy to read. It was easy to teach. On the flight back from that Linux world, I rewrote the lessons in Python, and a month later we were teaching Python to the 9th and 10th year people. So it was really, really a wonderful language. It was great. And I'm talking about Python 2.2, okay? I mean, many of you may not even, have been close to that, but it was just wonderful. So the language was what made me start with Python. And I still like the language. I am very strongly of the opinion that Python 3 is better than Python 2. I like Python 3 better personally. But I just last week did some training at a company. Actually, one of your sponsors. And it was mostly in Python 2. Python 2 is still a great language. I still love that language. I would say that as much as I have a religious text at all, it is the Zen of Python. I will say to myself, no, simple is better than complex. Oh, no. Now is better than never. Things like that. I will tell you, in my personal religion, I haven't quite worked out how to work in more namespaces, but I am trying to do that. So in other words, I really do, and always have, liked the language. But I don't think that in itself is enough. And I would agree with Brett that I stayed because of the community. And for me, this happened pretty early on. A couple of years after I got started in PyCon, I had a former student of mine was also working for me doing technical support things, and he found that they were starting this new conference called PyCon. There had been other conferences that had been devoted to Python, but they had been done by this corporate company, or there had been, in the very early days, they did this thing they called the Spam Conference, but it wasn't really a conference, it was just 20 people in a room for a day or something like that. So there was this new thing called PyCon, and he said, we should do a paper and, put in a talk and go to this PyCon. I was like, okay, Nathan, I guess we can do that. And so we went to the first PyCon, and we spoke about what we were doing. And as it turned out, I'm not sure if this is a good thing or a bad thing, but that was the first PyCon we ever had. I went to that one. I have been to every single PyCon US. So this is only a few of us are around that have done that, but and I plan to keep on going for the foreseeable future as far as that goes. So we, ended up giving talks. We organized open spaces. We used to have a teacher's open space in the early days in the evenings where we would spend the entire evening, having beers and complaining about how nobody paid enough attention to teachers and all of that. It was a good time. We actually even ended up seeing things well in advance of when they were released. If you remember the One Laptop Per Child project, and they had the little green OLPC with a little years, we got to, as the education open space, we got to play with a prototype. I think it was at least 6 months before it came out, because the person who was working on it brought one to the educational group. So there were just a lot of things like that. I ended up creating the poster session at PyCon because Steve Holden asked me to. Did an education summit. There were lots of things that I did. It seemed that I ended up doing a lot of Python teaching. The PSF, for some reason, and again, as I said yesterday in a talk, I don't want to question other people's judgment. That's kind of rude, but for some reason they felt that I should be in the Python Software Foundation. So all of those things brought me into the Python community and were the reason I'm sure that I stayed. For a long time, I assumed there would be some other better language that would come along in a couple of years and I would move on. Because after all, I'd done C, and then, well, C++ came along, and well, then Python came along, so you should expect there would be another language. And in fact, I have never felt the need to move on from Python, and I believe it is the community that is the reason for that. And I think what is special about the Python community, first of all, is that while nothing is perfect, it is inclusive in a way that many other programming language communities are not. It is, by and large, a safe place for people to be. And that is not just if you're like everybody else, but if you're different, it's still a safe place. You know, I say inclusive here, that's a deliberate choice of words. People talk a lot about diversity, and diversity is fine. That means you have different people, but that doesn't mean, diversity to me does not mean that they are all part of the same group. You just have different people tolerating each other. To be inclusive means that you're all working together, you're all part of the same community. So that's why I choose the word inclusive. And part of that is being safe to be different. Part of that is being respectful of everyone. Being open to having different people there, being welcoming to different people. This is an important thing for community. The fact that contributions are welcome, and not just like something off on the edge, but significant contributions. Not only do we allow it, we encourage people to do significant contributions whenever they can. For example, the co-organizer of Django Girls yesterday, it was her first Django Girls event. So she's able to contribute? Yes, do that. It's hard sometimes for communities to do that. But it's very important if you want to bring people in that you accept, encourage, and appreciate what they have to offer. If that does not happen, they will go away. And as I speak about, what the Python community is like, I feel I can speak from experience. As part of the Python community, I managed to do one of the hardest things I have ever done in my life, transition from one gender to another. As I say, becoming part of one of the most publicly hated groups, I think, that is around. And I felt when I was getting ready to do this, that I would not be able to stay in the Python community. When you do something like this, and people say that it's a choice and all of that, and there are other times where I talk about this, but you know you're going to lose a lot of things when you do this. and you've decided that's what you must do, I thought that the Python community was going to be something that I would have to lose. And I also knew that I would not hide it. And to my surprise, I suppose I shouldn't have been surprised, but I was, many people in the Python community made sure that I knew that I did not have to leave. And that meant a great, great deal to me. And even less significant than that, but a couple of years ago I moved to London because my company was starting a new business, and I needed to be over there for a couple of years. And even then, something like that, where I was going to a completely new place, someone from the Python community, I think it was like the second week I was there, said, hey, let's go have a beer, let's go have something to eat. I want to make sure that you know somebody here in London so that you don't feel all alone. So I'm pretty sure when I say that the Python community is inclusive, that it is. It is a global community. I am privileged in the role that I've got now as a chair of the PSF to be able to see a lot of different places in different parts of the world. This is a great privilege to me. And we are everywhere now. Or if we're not there, we're almost there. But so it's not just North America and Europe. It's now in Latin America. Brazil has a huge, huge, huge community and rapidly growing. Nigeria, we have sponsored, the PSF has sponsored in the past year 41 Django Girls events in Nigeria from the previous year when it was 1. So we're growing everywhere. Asia, I think now the PyCon APAC, Asia and Pacific PyCon, is like the second largest gathering for Python in the world. And that's as of just this past year, so growing everywhere. So, as I say, it is a global community. And there are many, many different ways that people can connect with this community. There are mailing lists, there's IRC, Slack, meetups, PyLadies, Django Girls, sprints, PyCons, everything. So there's a lot going on. And how do we have all of this stuff happen? Who does this? And the answer, of course, is all of us. Okay, so I have to now do the commercial part, okay? But it is also the Python Software Foundation. Part of our mission is to promote, protect, and advance the Python language, but also to support a global and diverse community of Python programmers. So this is what we are supposed to do. And, we worry about 3 things in the PSF. I'm telling you this because many people don't understand what the PSF does. We hold the intellectual property, we hold the copyrights for the Python language, and for the logos, and for the names, and all of that stuff that must be protected intellectual property. We take care of that. We take care of our members, and I hope you will all become members, and we also do some things with money. So, as I say, intellectual property, software licenses, trademarks, the PSF, the Python Software Foundation, does not decide what happens with the language. The core developer group does that. We could try to tell them, they would ignore us. I promise you, it wouldn't work. But we manage the intellectual property that they produce. We support them as much as we can as they are trying to do that. They are having a core developer sprint now. I mean, it's sometime around in the next weeks that we are supporting in terms of money and things like that. As far as members go, everybody in this room can be a member of the Python Software Foundation. Because if you go on to the PSF website, or the python.org website, and go to PSF, you can create an account, and once you've done that, you're a basic member of the PSF. You end up being on the PSF community mailing list. You get more announcements. You get some announcements in the email. You don't get to vote, but at least you support the PSF because we now know better. We now know how many people are part of our community, where they are, what they're interested in. So that's what a basic member does. Some people have chosen to become supporting members, which is $99 US per year. The thinking that they have is that if you are a professional making your living from Python, then being a supporting member and paying that amount per year is sort of a professional thing that they do. It's a way to support the community. It gives us money that we can use for other projects. So I will talk more about that in a second. Oops, wait a second. You can be a contributing or managing member if you are working on a Python Software Foundation working group. And we have a few of those. Like the people who decide who gets grants for events. Like we're a sponsor here. They decided that. Those people are automatically voting members of the PSF. Also, if you're a supporting member, you're a voting member of the PSF. Or if you contribute to the Python community 5 hours a month, you can become a voting member of the PSF, a contributing member of the PSF. You need to go fill out a little form saying what it is you do. And this could be organizing a meetup, it could be organizing PyLadies, it could be working on a particular software project that is part of the Python ecosystem. And people always start asking me questions, well, but suppose I did this kind of software project. It is for you to say whether or not it's a contribution to the Python community. Usually if it's something that other people are using, it counts. And then we started doing this again. We used to do it it was the only way you could get into the PSF was to be nominated by a member and then be voted in. We haven't done that for a few years. We just had our first time to basically take in new people this way. So anybody can nominate someone to be a fellow. Basically, this is a voting member for life because they have worked hard for Python and other people have realized it. So if you know of somebody who has spent a lot of time working for the advancement of the Python community, you can nominate them to be a fellow. We have a working group now of previous fellows. We actually go and we vote every month to see every quarter, every 4 months, to see who will go in. So you can certainly do that. So last thing is money. And the money part of it comes from donations, a little bit. From sponsorships, a little bit more. And from the profits for PyConES, which is most of it. So PyConES is a very big conference these days, and we make a certain amount of profit. And we use that profit to pay for things like sponsoring this PyCon, other PyCons all around the world. We use it for meetups, for things like Django Girls, things like PyLadies. We sometimes use that money to support people doing various software projects that are good for the Python community. We also use it to support some of our infrastructure. Some of our infrastructure we get as donation, but some of it we have to take care of ourselves. We have now 5 people working for the Python Software Foundation. 2 of them full-time and the rest are part-time. So we need to be able to pay these people. So those are the things that we use money for. And particularly, for example, for sponsoring things in countries like, say, I mentioned Nigeria, Brazil, various places like that where it's hard for them to find sponsors because they don't have a developed tech industry. That's where the money goes. So that's the PSF, and that's great. But the PSF by itself is not the Python community. The Python community is all of the meetups, the PyConES like this, developers, organizers around the world. That is the Python community. And we have a certain amount of strengths. We have a feeling of community. We have a dedication to education. Things like Django Girls, the very fact that we have like PyConES with all of these talks, we are becoming a power in data science. And this is driving a lot of our growth. This is a great thing. We're becoming more and more a part of science. This is also a great thing. But we do have some problems, some challenges, some things that we must solve. As far as the language is concerned, I think it's an open question just how much Python will be used as embedded explodes. MicroPython is a great language. If you have not played with MicroPython, you can get little cheap boards that will run MicroPython. In the UK, they started with the microbit, which is really fun, particularly if you've got kids. But MicroPython is a marvelous, an amazing miniaturization of Python to run on very small devices. But Python is not most places in the embedded world. Perhaps we should be. We also don't really run very well on mobile devices. There are projects that work with it, Kivy, Beware, so on, but you can't just write a Python app and put it on an app store and have it be there. Okay, I'm told theoretically you can, but I don't know of anybody who's actually done it for a successful app. So are we going to just give up on mobile? As everybody turns to mobile, we're going to say no? What are we going to do? The global interpreter lock. Everybody loves to hate the global interpreter lock. It's great. I've given 2 or 3 talks on the global interpreter lock, and I don't know anything. I mean, everybody can talk about it. But what are we going to do? When we I have 8 cores in my phone, and yet the Python that I run on a server runs on a single core. What are we going to do about that? Are we just going to say, no, we'll just do single core forever? I hope not. I think we have an interesting thing going on. Back in the day when I started, Python was just a scripting language. People looked down on it. Now I hear people telling me that, no, I do things like JavaScript. I'm not into this hardcore Python. Really? I have an opinion about JavaScript, but let's just pass that by. Perhaps we need to work a little bit harder on making sure that people understand what Python can do. I think we're just beginning to face issues of diversity and inclusion. Everybody says, oh, well, Python, you're doing so well, whatever. I think we have many things still to do there. We're just getting started. Perhaps we're a little bit more inclusive in terms of gender, but in terms of people of color, in terms of people who do not have as much money, in terms of lots of other things, I think we still have a lot to think about as to what kind of community we want to be. And our very success is a challenge, because as we grow, what are we going to do? I mean, when we started PyCon, it was 200 people. I mean, Guido himself ordered lunch. He ordered the same thing all 3 days because he didn't want to decide. So now it's 3,000 people. What are we going to do as we continue to grow? What are you going to do here as people want to have you be 20% bigger next year and 20% bigger the year after that? It becomes harder and harder to manage this and still stay a community. So we have to think about that. We have to make sure that we actually can distribute things out. We have tried in the PSF to say, look, we know not everyone can come to PyCon US, not everyone can go to EuroPython. We want to make sure that we have PyCons everywhere so that people can go to them, so that they're smaller, they're more manageable. And then if people really want to go to the big one, then they're fine. But we need to have this where people can get at it. A big one is financial. I mentioned that what a lot of the PSF does is money. We're doing more and more of it with the same amount of money. So we might need to think a little bit about that. As people keep asking us for money, we keep giving money, but wait a second, we're going to need to have more money coming in. So where I'm going is that we need everybody's help to keep the Python community growing and doing what it is. And people will quite often ask, well, what can I do to help the PSF? And that's a great question. I think part of the answer is that it's not necessarily the PSF where you should be thinking. In the US, for a long time, we've had this phrase, think globally, act locally. So thinking globally is what the PSF is trying to do. And you can join the PSF. We have just started. And in fact, I should have a tweet going out in 7 minutes. We have just started a membership drive for the PSF. We have never done this before, where we have a goal this month, in 30 days, to get 3,000, do I have that there? Yes. 3,000 basic members signed up. I don't know how many we've got so far. We've been doing it for 4 or 5 days. I don't think we're on pace. We need your help. We're also trying to raise $4,000 in donations or supporting memberships. And again, this will be money that will go to the things that I mentioned, actually running the infrastructure, paying our employees, and supporting events. Django Girls, PyConES, everything. The PSF will pay meetup fees for any Python meetup. Did you know that? So if you are running a Python meetup and you're using Meetup, meetup.com, you just fill out a form and we say, yes, provide the receipt, we'll send you the money so that you can do meetups. So those things everywhere is what we're trying to fund. So this is something that you can help in terms of, as I say, thinking globally. That's the global part of the picture. And again, I mentioned this actually. To be a basic member, all you need to do is sign up, and it helps us understand the size and the amount of support we have in the Python community. There is a mailing list that is open to everybody in that. But the real reason you should sign up for a basic membership, go on python.org, PSF, sign up, is because I have stickers. They're not very big, but they're really cool and exclusive. They're members only. So you need to find me in the next 2 days and convince me that you have signed up to be a basic member, and then you'll get a sticker. What did I do? I have lost, oh, nope, there we go. So that's the global part, but locally, what can you do? If you want to help the PSF with things that you can do, that's not really going to work very well because we don't have that many people that we need to do the PSF. I mean, certainly if you're asked to join a working group, you find a working group you're really interested in, I'm not saying don't do that. What I'm saying is where the work really is locally. So you have seen these people rushing around madly putting on this PyCon. Help them. Yesterday we had 2 people heroically putting on Django Girls. They could have used lots of help. You may have a local meetup, a local community. Help that. You may say, no, there's no community where I am. I've got an answer for that. Start a community. It does not have to be hard. It can be as easy as having coffee at the same place one night every month and letting people know you're there to talk about Python. People will find you and it will happen. So there are many things that you can do that way. You can mentor people. You can, offer to help people code. We have many online channels where you can help. There are many things that you can do to build a community locally. And that is where, if you want to act, you will have the most impact. And if you do that, it's fair to ask, what will you get? What will you get if you do that? If you do all of those things or any of those things that I mentioned? And that's the easy part for me to answer, because what you get is the Python community. Okay? So I want to again thank everybody. Again, the slides are there. And thank you very much for listening to me ramble on here. And if you're interested in the resources that I mentioned, they're right there. But that is what I have to say to you, so I will get out of your way and let you get on with PyConES. Thank you. So if there do happen to be any questions, I think we have a moment or two. So if anyone cares to ask, certainly open to that. I think we're rushing around trying to find a microphone. Or maybe you'll just have to speak loudly and I'll repeat it. Things don't always run perfectly, you have to understand. No, we don't have anything? Does anybody have a question they want to just stand up and ask or not? I mean, it's fine if not, but anything? Okay, well, thank you very much.